In this video, we're discussing how to brew a longer espresso shot with the Flair 58. Welcome, my name is Patrick Rolfe and this is Coffee with April. For this episode, we're back with the Flair 58 espresso maker. If you haven't checked it out, check out our first video with that, where we kind of go through all the basics. Now, one of the things we talked about in that video was that we really wanted to make longer shots of espresso, pretty much, right? And we've been basically taking the last week here trying to figure out how to do that in the best way. So we talked to Flair, we talked a little to the kind of YouTube community as well, and the people watching our first video. And we basically figured it out. And then now we just want to basically share that recipe with you because we're kind of excited. In our world, a longer espresso shot is almost always going to taste better than the alternative, right? And when we say longer, we're somewhere between a 1 to 2.5 to 1 to 3 brewing ratio, more or less, right? So what we have here, what we prepped today is a wash-processed geisha varietal from the El Socorro farm in Guatemala. We're popped in basically a 20-gram ridgeless VST filter, and we're dosing 19 grams of coffee. And on the Flair, in terms of temperature setting, we're setting it on the highest. That basically means that we have all three green lights shining at the same time, right? We tried a few different temperatures and this is just kind of our go-to. We find that is actually tasting really good and really sweet. So now what we want to do is basically just show you how we're pulling this kind of longer shot. And a big part of that is basically just water, right? And it's actually super simple the way they do it. You more or less just start by filling up the chamber all the way to the top. And then I'm also gonna tap and prep the coffee. So we're filling up the chamber with preheated water, 295 degrees, which is basically our target brew temperature. And this is just to make sure that even though it is basically heating up the water, we just wanna make sure we have 100% consistency there, right? So we're popping in the filter. As we said in our first video, you have to be a little bit careful to make sure that the top part is perfectly kind of set. So just make sure that's tight. We have the coffee in, it's tamped, it's ready. We filled up the chamber with water. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna lift up the lever. And as we see all of that water kind of going down on the coffee, there's actually room here to just fill it up with more. Now we're not necessarily measuring this, but we haven't really had an issue with it. So we're kind of fine with it. So we're filling up with a little bit more water here. And then from here, we're basically gonna start our extraction. So we're gonna start the timer and then just press all the way through, aiming for a bar around 7 in this case. It's actually super easy to just adjust whatever pressure you want here. We've seen a few videos where people are seemingly not able to get whatever pressure they want, which we haven't really struggled with. And we're gonna pull this shot out to 50 grams pretty much. And then when you're done, you basically wanna make sure that the lever is basically hold it up. Espresso is removed, and then I'm just gonna pull this all the way up to make sure that we don't have more water coming through, because now we actually have more water in the chamber here. We would probably recommend, just from a cleaning perspective, that it could be a good thing to actually pop another cup underneath and just press that all the way through. We find it to be so much easier to actually clean everything afterwards, and you're not stuck with a bunch of water on top of the filter, right? But basically what's cool here is that thanks for kind of the YouTube community, but also obviously Flair, we're now able to have a lot more control of our shots. And we find that there's really no limitation to what we can do. Like some of the longest shot you could pull here is probably up to 70, 80, 90 grams, which we would never be that long anyway in terms of espresso shots. We don't really need that. So it's actually super interesting to see how versatile it is. Now when we kind of popped in the right basket, again, still using the Mythos behind me, we haven't found kind of a home grinder that we are happy with in terms of espresso, but we're continuing that kind of search. And if you have any recommendations, we're always welcome. We're always happy to kind of hear about it, right? So in general, we're quite happy with it. Taste-wise, it's tasting good. There's no reason why this wouldn't eventually be able to taste as good as anything coming out of this machine here. The obvious challenge here is that it takes a little bit of practice to just manually fix that pressure to make sure that it's always what you want it to be. But we also don't see any reason why that would be so much of an issue. So it's really more about going back to basics, figuring out that grind size, figuring out distribution, and making sure that that ratio it's maximizing what you get out of the coffee. I can say, like, personally, one of the things I've been moving away from a little bit is that back in the days I used to roast espresso for a very long time, and I feel more and more now, also from a competition perspective, that I'm actually down to brew a fresher espresso. Fresher espresso being about 2 weeks resting, right? So that's still a properly roasted coffee. But I find quite often now when I brew espresso that if I move to 3 weeks rest or 4 weeks rest, it's actually a lot more acidic than the alternative of brewing something a little bit earlier. So let's say 2 weeks, where 2 weeks you can still let all of that gas out, have a really clean profile, but you just have a little bit more inherent sweetness. So yeah, that being said, we're kind of happy with it. We finally figured this one out. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time, and whenever we get something new in, we kind of, we're always excited. We just put videos out there, and it goes without saying that we're going to learn more about it as we kind of work with it, and we're going to make sure to also share that journey with you guys here, right? So as always, we want to thank you for watching, and if you want more insight in what we do, more brewing details, kind of follow my own barista journey here now for the World Championship, sign up on Patreon. That's where all the kind of nitty-gritty details comes up. And with that, we just want to say thank you for watching and have a good day. We want to give a special thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. It's because of you that we are able to continue to make these videos. And we want you all to feel free to always come with suggestions and ideas on the content that you want to see, because we are doing this for you and because of you. Thank you from all of us here at April.